Welcome to the Nurses Out Loud radio show. We will be starting in a few moments, so please stay tuned. If you are watching on social media, please give us a like, share, and follow. And for those of you who would like some more info, please go check us out at nursesoutloud.com. Thank you.
Well, it's that time of year again, folks. Flu season. And once more, nurses and healthcare workers are being told, take the shot or wear the mask. But not just any mask. A level 1 non-sterile single-use pleated mask, the kind that offers minimal protection against airborne particles and yet is expected to be worn for 12 hours straight if you refuse the flu shot. This isn't science, it's symbolism, a form of compliance dressed up as infection control. The truth is, these policies aren't coming from OSHA or federal law. They're internal hospital directives, created under pressure from accrediting bodies like the Joint Commission. They're designed to look compliant, not be effective. Meanwhile, the real hazards, like poor ventilation, re-aerosolization, and cross-contamination, are ignored. Today, we're going to unpack what's really behind these policies, where they come from, why they persist, and how they violate both science and ethics. And there's no one better to help us than my friend, Kristen Megan, a 23-year veteran in occupational and environmental toxicology, a former Air Force industrial hygienist, and a courageous whistleblower who spent her career exposing unethical health and environmental practices. She continues to fight relentlessly for truth, transparency, and informed consent. Kristen has worked in the field of occupational and environmental toxicology as a senior industrial hygienist for 20 years. Her work spanned public health, decontamination site management, and hazardous material management, including the safe storage and disposal of vaccines and other regulated waste. She served on infectious disease committees, trained hospital staff in universal precautions, and spent 9 years on active duty where she herself became vaccine injured, a turning point that would lead her to blow the whistle on unethical practices hidden from the public. Today, medically retired from field work, Kristen channels her expertise into health freedom advocacy and investigative journalism. She's appeared on international and national television, in multiple documentaries, and continues to expose how mask and vaccine mandates, when applied as a one-size-fits-all solution, endangers both worker and patient safety. Kristen, welcome to Nurses Out Loud. It's always a privilege to have you here.
Well, I'm always glad to be here. And Jody, once again, it's kind of sad that we have to meet this way because, my job, as you mentioned, is to assess exposure and risks, not optics. And right now, optics are definitely replacing protection still to this day.
Yeah, 100%. I want to give the listeners a little bit of a background how you and I met back in 2020 when the when the mask mandates came out. I was doing research. I was like, what are we doing? We, do these work? We had Fauci come out and say, we're not going to be a nation of mask wearers. And then for him to flip flop like he did and say, oh, wear 1, wear 2, wear 3 masks. So anyway, I found Kristen, and I lovingly like to tell her that I was stalking her on her Facebook page, really just taking in all of the education, her and Tammy Clark. And then through them, I met Stephen Petty and so many people that I had met and done so research. I think you even lovingly gave me the title of like a not a industrial hygienist, but I can speak on it pretty well.
You're an honorary.
An honorary. That's it. That's it. And then when I blew the whistle with James O'Keefe, my story went viral, and she realized that I had been following her. And I was like, "Girl, I've been following you for 18 months, sharing
I was like,
everything."
her name sounds so familiar. Who's this person that's been liking all my posts?
Right. And so yeah, so we did we did oh, what was that called that we did with Tammy and the neurosurgeon and everything in
That
Michigan.
was our American Frontline Industrial Hygienist and Multidisciplinary Support Summit. That
Yes.
long name. Yeah.
Yes, and so there's a lot. I'm going to put the link to that here in the show notes as well. But you know what, Kristen, let's talk about industrial hygienists. I think
Mhm.
a lot of people don't know what your experience is.
Yeah. So a lot of people, especially within the healthcare profession or just general industry and construction, have heard of OSHA. And
Mhm.
I am the equivalent level of OSHA. And so, like, if you think of OSHA, EPA, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the Department of Transportation pertaining to hazardous materials and disposable, I am the civilian equivalent of that. So, maintaining compliance and being the liaison between the rights of the workers while also maintaining compliance with the federal government or state programs. But I did work for the federal government for almost 12 years because I was on active duty working in bioenvironmental engineering, which is the Air Force equivalent of everything I just said. And then when I left, I was embedded into a VA hospital in Chicago. So, what we do in a short summary is we anticipate, recognize, evaluate, and control a bunch of health hazards in the workplace. We're kind of behind the scenes, and I joke that you don't know what we do till something goes wrong. But this
Mm.
goes from any hazard that you can experience in the workplace. And when I say that, you have to think for a moment, where do we spend most of our time? Either in our own workplace or somebody else's workplace as a customer or patient or visitor. So
Mm.
I have to, in my job, identify what everybody does and to do job demand analysis, risk assessments on what they do, how often, what are the hazards, what are the federal laws under OSHA or the EPA or the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that I have to get them in compliance with. While also, I will have a caveat to that, while also determining if they can, because sometimes we could violate OSHA standards, but it was acceptable because we had to explain how the job was different and how we what they want us to do would actually create a greater hazard. So that's important
Mhm.
because in healthcare, it's do no harm. In my profession, it's do not create a greater harm. And we are
Mhm.
exposure scientists, and we actually are a vital piece of the puzzle. We're actually, if you're talking about a pandemic, we are the first people that assess the hazard and then send the information to a team. And of course, as you know, my profession was left off in the beginning of 2020. So there's a lot that we do. And just to kind of close that out is we're talking about hazards that are illumination, ergonomics, contact, ingestion, inhalation,
Mhm.
ingestion, anything that can harm the human body. And that's why our field falls into toxicology, because we have to understand multiple routes of entry exposure because of synergistic toxicity, which maybe we'll get into later.
Yeah, we will. We're going to pull up but some diagrams here and show people. But let's start with the basics here. So every year, hospitals roll out these masks for decliner policies, right?
Mhm.
But what most nurses don't realize is there is no federal law or OSHA law that requires you to wear a mask if you don't take the flu shots. These are internal policies created to meet accreditation optics, right? So can you break down where these masking policies originate from and whether they have any scientific foundation in occupational health?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you, there is no scientific evidence to this. This is about control, and I mean that. It's about control and compliance so that you just look like you're going above and beyond. But when you have the professionals that are actually coming in to do these accreditations, I used to do Joint Commission um, accreditation inspections. They're based right out of Chicago. And when you have someone that's declining, saying the flu shot, They say if you don't get a flu shot, or back during the pandemic, it was if you don't get this new experimental injection, you have to wear a mask. And the thing is that that is wrong, because just because when it comes to any other injection, just because you don't get it does not mean that you're creating a hazard. But if you're going to proclaim that I am a hazard to other employees, you have to provide proper exposure controls. And masks are not PPE. They fall nowhere on the hierarchy of safety and controls, which I know you know about. They are considered source control, but not for a virus. They are source control for large droplets of bacteria. Like if you were to have spit or sputum come out, it's going to just act as like a barrier. It has nothing to do with stopping the transmission of an aerosolized virus whatsoever. And actually in that, remember, do not create a greater harm. It's actually under OSHA 5, they have something, where there's a standard, there's a hazard. But where there's a hazard, there's not always a standard. So they have something called Rule 5, the General Duty Clause. And I was telling people during the pandemic, call on your employer and tell them that they're violating the General Duty Clause because they're creating a greater risk, because prolonged mask wearing, it was providing a false sense of protection to the other employees. And they're not designed to be worn for as long as they were worn, how often that they were being worn. Anytime you touch it one time, you have to change it out. Can you imagine how many masks we would have gone through? Yeah. When by the way, an OSHA citation exists when you know that there's a control method, meaning when I say that, meaning some sort of equipment, administrative control like training or a barrier, or technology or PPE. If there is something that is able to better control the hazard, you have to explain and document. Remember that saying, if you didn't document, you didn't do it, why you're not using it. And we've known since the 1950s that dilution and destruction technologies through engineering controls like better filtration in the HVAC, lifting these aerosols out of the breathing zone, which are what we have. We have positive and negative pressure rooms in hospitals. So we already knew that a better control existed. So what this is doing is it is shaming people. I find it to be a form of harassment and also an OSHA violation under Rule 5, because like you said, it's under the Respiratory Protection Program. It's not a respirator, and it's a source control for a hazard that doesn't exist.
There you go. Let me pop up a picture here of the mask, just a typical box of masks that you'll see in all of hospitals everywhere. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a typical medical face mask. It's saying that it is meets ASTM F2100 level 1 requirements. Now, I don't expect you to know what that ASTM F2100-19 means, but does this mask provide protection for somebody transmitting a respiratory illness?
No, and basically the standard is just saying what are the limitations and usage of this. And you will see that it involves, now because this is medical and not just the brown tan ones, those ones are for nuisance dust. It just tells you it's for large droplets of spit and sputum, like bacterial. And actually it points out to you that it's not for a viral hazard at hand. And it also explains how you have to be trained on it. And it also explains that you can't wear these and expect protection if you are, say, wearing a beard. And also, it kind of like encompasses everything we're going to talk about. But one thing I want to kind of explain in the beginning of this to get people's further attention, if you are saying you're going to wear this mask that's not rated for the hazard that you're claiming because you didn't get a flu shot, how else are we transmitting the flu? Because you completely forget the ocular hazard. You know what I mean? So I'm sneezing and then rubbing my eye. I'm not wearing any protection. That's why, in like TB areas, you get fit tested for an N95, but also in certain conditions, they're in powered air purifying respirators or they're in actual goggles. And that's so you don't touch or nothing. You can absorb it right in here and it gets into the olfactory area. So even if they did work, you're still ignoring another route of entry of the hazard. So it's just so negligible that it blew my mind that we put so much emphasis on such a negligible control measure that actually provided less than a 1% risk reduction and increased your chance of higher CO2 and improper gaseous exchanges.
Right. I mean, back in COVID, it's like, and effectively, doing it now, to wear a mask, right? We were putting them in brown paper bags. They were running them under like some, I don't know, light, to try to destroy it. And people were reusing them. We were going into rooms, prior to all of this, if you had, say, a flu patient, okay, we have a flu patient positive, symptomatic flu patient. Typically, they want you to wear a gown and a mask and gloves. And when you went in so you had a gown up outside of the room. When you went into the room, you did your task, and then you took it off in the room and threw it away before coming out into the common area. We weren't doing that during COVID. We were wearing that same PPE room to room to room.
And you know what's interesting? So I've been in this profession, like you said, 23 years, but I was embedded in healthcare for 12 of it. And when we would run drills and we do these inspections, and like I said, I ran committees, I sat on committees for infection control. We would do environmental care rounds to make sure, have you ever worked in a facility where they had the hand hygiene practices where when you came out, and it got you repetitive. It was to be muscle memory. But then the goal of that was to always train to control health hazards from multiple routes of entry of exposure, touch, inhalation, or maybe ingestion if you're like picking your tooth after you would just touch something. But my point is, that was muscle memory to train you to do it at a time when you had a pandemic. And yet, when it was the pandemic, we started ignoring standards and making shortcuts and pretending. Like, does that make sense? We literally had this training and practice for this moment, and then we made excuses. It didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. None of this made sense. That's how I knew it was being purposely handled wrong, but that's for another podcast. But yeah, it's Jody, it's insane. And what you're describing, especially if you have isolation rooms with secondary, you ever been to a facility where there's a room and then there's a separate room and then you go out? Those are engineering controls. But what you're talking about are administrative controls, knowing that you're going to switch out a mask or sometimes an N95 respirator is one patient use, depending on the hazard at hand. So yeah, I know I train on it and I know the standards, but I'm sure you got the annual training. So you had to kind of go, what are we doing here?
Right. I mean, we're up at my hospital to get fit tested again. Okay. And they put the hood on, you put the mask on, you make sure that it's sealed, and then you put the hood on, and then they spray some like sugar mist in the air. Saccharin. Okay. They spray that. And if you can taste it, then the mask is not sealed properly. Okay. And they make you, move your head. You have to talk, read a paragraph, all of these things to make sure that the mask is sealed properly. But this mask, Kristen, this mask that I just showed, that does not stop it at all.
Well, first, I just want to tell you the test that you described is called a qualitative fit test. And there are two types of fit. Well, there's actually three, but we only use primarily two, and that's qualitative and quantitative. I just want to tell you the qualitative is highly outdated. And I get so annoyed that people still do that, because what are you relying on? The person to answer. We have people that are lazy and will say they know they can taste it, but you're relying on them to tell you because they just want to get out of there. Like you're saying is when you're only fit test an N95 and up, and N95 is the bottom of the barrel respirator. But there is a test called a quantitative test where they put like a tube through it and they connect it to a machine. And for example, there's one called a port account, and it does a calculation to determine the proper fit factor needed. It's telling you whether or not you are getting enough outside air or in. It's letting you know, because you're always going to have a little. But that's also clean shaven, medically cleared, and the fit test. Remember the rainbow passage, and they have you doing these tests, and what you're describing, so people know, is a fit test. And I've done well over 10,000 of them. So yeah, it's the most boring part of my job. But when you are transitioning to a mask that everyone had at the stores giving out, that you have forced to wear if you don't get a flu shot, those you cannot fit test. And they are not, again, personal protective equipment and not able to control the hazard at hand.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, if you put them on, right here on the side, you have huge gaps that come in.
Mm-hmm.
You have gaps on the side, you have gaps in the nose. People take them down so they can eat or drink, put it back up. You have cross-contaminated. You are actually creating such a greater hazard. You are the person that is more likely to spread whatever the hazard at hand that they're trying to take care of, especially if it's a virus. So, I mean, it's so infuriating, Jody, because you should ask yourself, okay, she's saying this. This is like basic industrial hygiene, respiratory protection. Why wasn't this like common knowledge? This just goes to tell you how so many people are scared to talk the truth. But to me, I've always said it's as simple as if we were told to put out grease fires with water, most people that are firefighters would have said, let's not do that. That creates a greater hazard. That is how simple don't wear a mask for an aerosolized virus is to me.
Yeah. Right. I mean, so we
Getting
have
mad. So
I know it really infuriates me every single time, that we have nurses or hospital workers wearing these 12 hours a day, not only when you're working with people. Okay. And, I mean, nursing and healthcare is a small community. When they know, like, that they see that mask on you from October to May, that also is telling people that you didn't take the flu shot. You know what I mean? And so that, not only do I feel that violates ethics and, evidence-based practice, because there is no real science behind wearing the mask. And I know that there's been multiple studies that have come out even since COVID, saying that. But like you said, we've had, 50 years of research on this, that we already knew that they didn't stop it. And so from an industrial hygiene standpoint, what's the risk of them wearing the same mask for 12 hours? I mean, if they really have to wear it, how often should they be changing it out?
are we talking about a mask?
Yeah, just the regular
Okay.
surgical mask.
So if they're wearing it for its intended use, which is just when you're doing like sutures or you're doing blood draws and you're worried about splashback, it will be a very minimal barrier for inhaling or getting it in your mouth. Every time you go and see a different patient, you have to change it out. It's not to be worn in different areas. And the thing is every time you touch it, you also have to change it out. But to go back to what you just said, that this is kind of a moment of shame amongst your fellow employees, because I know, oh, Jody didn't do it. What does it do for people who now know it's been in the news so much? There's been lawsuits about employees forced to wear masks because they didn't get a flu shot. Huge case in Canada. What do you think that does for confidence and care for a patient? Depending if they've followed the fear tactics of the media and social media, they'd be like, oh my gosh, this nurse Jody.
Yeah.
Oh, she doesn't believe in science. Oh, I don't want like they're not going to take you seriously. You're not going to have the proper communication skills. This goes a lot deeper because the people that are choosing not to wear them are the ones that are actually following the science.
Exactly. That's it right there. I mean, I can't tell you how many nurses, Kristen, I have spoken to even recently that are like, you know what? I'm not taking the shot. They lost my trust. I'm not taking any shots anymore. I will refuse to do that. And if they want me to wear the mask as a chin strap, I'll wear it as a chin strap. And, and during COVID, I did that. I wore it as a chin strap, right? Because I had to have it on my face. I had to have it. And now, 5 years later, it's like I am at a crossroads here. It's like, do I stay at my current employer, or do I leave? Because I won't be wearing it as a chin strap either. Like, I just won't. And I
Well,
know that there's a lot of people that have that a dilemma too. And it's not easy. But I think if, all of us that have the conviction and the education and we know that it's not working, it's like trying to band together and change it. But I just don't know how fruitful it would be.
well, it's also, there's multiple things here. So going back to the actual shaming of wearing the mask, if you're asked to wear the same one all day long, by the way, putting it under light isn't going to do anything because you're dealing with a very porous material. But there's microplastics in them and they degrade very long. That's why they are not intended to be pulled and messed with and pulled down, and then they rip. And again, microplastics. But also, when you are the person that is wearing it in an environment where you have an aerosolized virus, you even just wearing it on your chin, like having it on your face and then taking it off and doing this and re-wearing it, you could have infectious aerosols that have landed, and it collects with dust. It's just landed on the outside of the mat. You're walking around with something that's contaminated. And it's like, it's like your home filter and then just wearing your home filter on your face. And it's not filtering out the hazard, but it's other things. We still have other contaminants in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just putting a material there that is making it more respirable. But
right.
I'm trying to figure out how to frame this. The mask wearing has a bigger issue. I don't know if your time in nursing, you've ever had to do drills and then you do after action reports or tabletop exercises. Okay. Where are the after action reports? Because when you're putting a control in place, you also have to go back and revisit and reassess, kind of like, is it efficacious? Is it working to reduce the hazard? We darn well know that wearing a mask did nothing to stop COVID. It's not going to stop the flu. If it's not going to. Yeah. So why are we not using these after action reports? They're designed to be a lessons learned. Mm-hmm. This is a failure on a hospital management system to still require people to wear masks because they don't get a shot for something, which I'm sure you're aware, getting the flu shot. I know when I was in the military, every time someone got the flu shot, half my flight was out, and we worked in the hospital. Mm-hmm. I haven't had the flu since I was in the military because I don't get the flu shot anymore. Right. So who's really the hazard?
Yeah. On the second half of this break, we're going to get into the Cleveland Clinic study that came out, talking about 53,000 healthcare workers. We're going to talk about engineering controls and really just get into a little bit more detail. But before we go to a break, guys, I know if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know that I really like to use the immune mist. And that immune mist, they have a nasal drops and oral. And they also just came out with hypertonic saline spray that you can use on the kiddos. And it's just a fine mist that you can put up the nose and really try to stop the replication for viruses, bacteria, or all the contaminants that, that's out there. It's not just the flu. It's not just COVID. It's environmental particles. It's allergens. It's those types of things. And while I don't use it like every single day, I will use it like if I'm at work and I'm around somebody that I know that is sick, or if I have a tickle in my throat, or I'm feeling a little bit of congestion. And that has really helped me prevent so many illnesses. So if you are interested, go to immunemist.com /RN Jody, and you can get a discount there. And we will be right back after the break, guys.
If you are a nurse that is fed up with the sick care model, I have a solution for you. My name is Melissa Schreibfatter, and I am the owner and founder of the Functional Nurse Academy. FNA is the most comprehensive functional medicine training program on the market, specifically tailored to nurses. It is self-paced and equips LPNs, RNs, and nurse practitioners to practice functional medicine, address the root causes of dysfunction, and start their independent functional medicine practices. At FNA, you will learn how to order labs, functional health reports, create customized wellness plans, package and price your services, and even how to market your brand effectively. Graduates earn 90 nursing CEUs, and then they qualify for multiple board certification titles. They also will have access to our exclusive tools, such as our Functional Nurse Toolkit, our social media and marketing kit. And I don't want to just train you and send you on your way. So you also will get access to me each month via the Functional Nurse Academy monthly mentorship program, where you will be able to attend a live class with me each month. So say goodbye to sick care and start your dream career as a functional medicine nurse. Enroll today at functionalnurseacademy.com.
All right. So welcome back. Thank you for joining me. I am your host, Nurse Jody O'Malley, and I am joined today by my friend and industrial hygienist, Kristen Megan, who have been breaking this nonsense of wearing a mask to prevent the transmission of flu and so forth. But on this second half of the break, I really want to get into the industrial engineering controls, really versus the symbolic PPE. But guys, if you are watching here, whatever platform you are watching us or listening to us on, because we are on iHeartRadio, we are on all of the podcast apps, Rumble, Substack, you name it, we're out there. And also on AmericaOutloud.news. They have just such a great platform for so many different areas, where there's the hosts that speak from constitutionalists to attorneys and doctors and everything in between. So go check out AmericaOutloud.news and the AmericaOutloud.shop to support our family of sponsors. All right, Kristen, I am going to pop up this hierarchy of controls, and I just want you to describe what we are looking at here.
Oh, this thing makes me so happy. It's like, it's more accurate than the food pyramid. So
yeah,
you can
and it's
see
probably
on
what we should do to the food pyramid is flip it upside down too.
right? But you can see right there on the left-hand side already where I told you, the most effective, least effective, and mask doesn't even fall on this. So this hierarchy of safety and controls that we use, like I told you, this has been known data since the 1950s. So when we're in any situation, whether it's a healthcare setting or say in a manufacturing plant, automotive plant, the first very top of that is substitution and elimination. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're doing something where they have to strip paint off of something, the solvent that they use. Is there a safer version of that? Or can we use a machinery to get the paint off? Can we eliminate the hazard, or do we have to substitute it for something safer? Obviously, when it comes to like say COVID or the flu, you can't substitute or eliminate the hazard. But what's right below that? The engineering controls. Dilution destruction technology, filtration technology, containment technology. That is what you see all the time. Well, you see it, but you don't see it. So when you go into any single office space, grocery store, hospital, your work, do you understand that your building code has to change the air exchanges so many cubic feet per minute based on something called ASHRAE standards? That's actually something that is required under like life safety codes. So it is very well known behind the scenes, like builders, maintenance people, engineers, the people that are working your HVAC in any facility. That is the most effective. And engineering controls will usually reduce 92 to 95% of the hazard. So why wouldn't this be a priority? So sometimes though, you can't get it, say we have something that's carcinogenic. I'll give you a perfect example. When I was in the Air Force, we had people that were sanding aircraft parts for maintenance, replacing like a flap on a plane that had cadmium and chromium, which are carcinogenic metals, and they have to use a sander. Okay. This was so hazardous, even though we had them in respiratory protection. That was a full face respirator that provided the respirator, the respirable and ocular hazard protection. They had the proper rated filters on there for that hazard, fit, tested, trained, clean shaven. But because of the amount that was generated, they still needed something else. So to get to that PPE, guess what was above it? Pneumatic sanders. That when you sanded, it had a bag that collected all the fine particulate carcinogenic dust. And then they still had the respirator. But that respirator that they're wearing, you see it first and you're like, that's to protect them. But what's way above that? The pneumatic sander. Then the administrative controls was wet method cleanup. Because if you're cleaning something up, just think about if you get glitter. You don't take a paper towel and wipe it. It's going to go everywhere, right? But if you get it wet, it's going to pick it up without making it airborne. So you have the sander, the wet method cleanup, and then the respiratory protection. Sometimes you need all of that to protect the hazard. But we just jumped right down to PPE. N95s are PPE. But again, N95s were not rated properly for infectious aerosols of this size. So we should have gone straight up to engineering. And just so you know, other forms of administrative controls is also like time distance shielding for people in radiology. It's annual training.
So when you're talking about the radiology, I remember when I was in that area in pain management, and I had to wear a device on my like kind of by my
that's called a TLD badge, thermal luminescent dosimeter badge. And someone like me comes in, whether it's monthly, quarterly, and I send it off to a lab because employees can only be exposed to, say, like 2 MR, the unit of measurement, 2 MR per year. And if you're over it, guess what? The administrative controls, you have to be rotated out of that job because you can only be exposed to so much radiation because of how your body can, rid yourself of the toxic effects of radiation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
that's an administrative control.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can just see, kind of just remove the top one, but engineering, which we already had. We could have just stopped there, actually. We could have just stopped there and said, my local grocery store where they've required you to wear a mask, they could have just bypassed energy restrictions, increased the air exchanges per hour. And just so you know, like things like COVID and those tiny little microns, they can stay suspended in really bad stagnant air for up to 30 days. But if you had increased those air exchanges, it's pulling constantly. It's pulling constantly the air out of the breathing zone. That is why if anyone has still been awake when you rolled into an OR, when they open the doors, it's like, and it's cold. That is an engineering control. And that is to increase the air exchanges so that when you're opening the body cavity, you're doing things, it is creating a safer environment for the patient and the employees. This is not new. This has been around forever. This, prior to the pandemic, if you just went straight to PPE or not even PPE, when there was available control measures of it, you would get cited by OSHA. But they dropped the ball and were guilty of their own revisionism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they came out with a new emergency temporary standard for COVID, right? That allowed.
Yeah, we stopped it though.
Tell us about that. What was happening behind the scenes with that?
Yeah, so there was a lawsuit that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and my colleague Tammy Clark and I did amicus, people say it both ways, brief to basically explain the science and the government's own standards. That's the best part, is when you're trained by the government and you know the regulations and standards, you just quote them. So when you're calling OSHA out on their own ETS standard, which again bypassed available control measures, they have no case. So yeah, I'm on a list at OSHA and they've sent me cease and desist letters, but
you know what? I did go to OSHA to prepare for this interview, and it was interesting because on one of the Q&As it said that masks are effective to stop transmission of COVID, and that there's been some There's been some talk going around that a 0.1 micron size isn't effective, but those people don't understand how the bacteriostatic charge of the N95 stops it or something, right? Have you seen that recently?
I haven't seen that, but I know that argument. So that charge that's on the outside, that's why you're not supposed to rewear them. That is designed, yes, for certain aerosol sizes, but not the size that we're talking about with COVID. Absolutely not. And it could stop some of it. But again, if you were fit tested, trained, and clean shaven, and guess what type of protection you got? Highest, maybe 65%. But they also
Wow.
had you rewearing them. Do you want to be 65? People who, let's just say let's say people are using a contraceptive. If it's 65%, are you going to feel confident if you're getting treatment for an illness? 65%. But over here, you've got 92 to 95%. Which one are you going to go for?
Right.
And
Right.
I actually am glad you brought that up because I haven't been on OSHA's website in a while because I just wrote them off as ineffective. But now that we've got good people in the White House, I am going to write a letter calling them out because they need to go back to how they were pre-2020.
Yeah,
And just
do
so
that.
you know, pre-2020, they were writing up people in healthcare for making people wear masks for the flu. And when they were having people rewear N95 respirators, they were written up. And the only thing that OSHA gave an emergency exemption non-inspection criteria for was the annual fit test. But if you were an initial hire, you still had to get your fit test. But when you get a fit test, they tell you it's annually because some people, depending on if it's a tight-fitting respirator, even just certain dental care and crowns can change your face shape and you might need a different size. But also weight loss and gain can change your face shape. So you might need a different size. But they just forgot everything. It went out the window.
Yes, they did. Yeah. Go on the website. I think you'll have some fun with that.
I might
Because
have to grab a little glass of white wine to do that, Jody.
Yeah, 100%. So what you're basically saying is that if hospitals had upgraded ventilation, maybe even putting some UV disinfection or air exchanges, would we even need these visible compliance tactics?
Not whatsoever. Now, here's the thing. When you were doing thing that was air, and it's, oh my gosh, right there. So anyone ever just goes on YouTube, you can look up hospital respiratory protection. Okay, hospital respiratory protection toolkit training. It literally tells you if you're working around infectious aerosols and doing aerosol generating procedures, certain surgeries, chest compressions, different tests, you have to wear a powered air purifying respirator. It doesn't even say an N95 respirator. And it's because even though you have the engineering controls, let's think about that. It's gonna pull the aerosols higher and at a faster rate. But also, what if you're like this close to a patient and you're doing something? I'm not a healthcare provider, but is it a bronchoscopy? I'm saying that correctly? Or doing a TE, anything where the hazard is going to hit you before the air can be exchanged. That is when you need a powered air purifying respirator. When you have suspected or known patient that has the type of illness where it's spread via aerosolized viral load. So yeah, it's not just air exchanges. You have ionizers and scrubbers that you can put in your HVAC system. And when you're using, my gosh, my brain's not working today. When you have a sterilization unit, when you take something to the sterilization, they have ethylene oxide, ETO sterilizers. And guess what? Under EPA standards, when they have scrubbers, they have technology, engineering controls in that stack before it's released into the air. And we have to actually send in our sampling of that to be compliant. It's lessening the hazard before it gets to the environment. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. This technology is so well known, especially in healthcare. It's so egregious. It's so ridiculous. And it insults the education of the hospital's own staff who've been trained on this for years.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, because there is a human side to this. you know,
Yeah.
hospital workers wearing these masks for 12 hours, rebreathing CO2, sweating, dehydrating, breaking out in rashes. I mean, there's studies out there that show that prolonged use affects cognition and
Yep.
mood and oxygenation. But they were out there saying, "Oh no, it doesn't change any of that. Your oxygen level is just fine wearing it." And it's like, okay, people, put on a mask now, take it off. Where do you breathe better? And because you had some of these like mask Nazis, I called them, and they're like, "Oh, it's the same," and I was like, It's not the same. How can you say
Go for a
that?"
run. Go for a run in one and let me know. Because just so you know, anytime you cover your face, it is a natural human biological response to increase your respiration rates.
Mhm. Yeah.
There are people like me, I'll just tell you, I have POTS. Some people, like, I'm fine one day I'm not. And anytime that I'm in an environment where I'm going to have to increase my respiration rates, I'm immediately tachycardic. I think I've sent you texts of like, this is my heart rate
Yes.
today.
Yes.
So the thing is that when you're increasing your respiration rates and then based on, because apparently there's not the best air quality in healthcare right now, apparently,
Mhm.
you can have relative humidity that's higher and you're going to create more, you're like, when you breathe, when you get like the condensation, it creates like a moist environment that is a breeding ground for bacteria. And
Mhm.
then when you have things getting trapped, like your own spit, like, I don't know if you've ever talked to me accidentally, like spit or gleeked, as they
Yeah.
say, that builds up and then you're restricting your breathing and those improper gaseous exchanges. Now that I do know about because I have to study that mechanism. It, like you said, it causes cognitive issues. It also, we know it affects like the hemoglobin transferring oxygen to the rest of your body. That is very well known. And you want to know why I know this? Because pre-COVID, if you were pregnant, you were precluded from wearing a respirator because of the demand that it put on your cardiovascular and respiratory system.
Mm. Yep. And yet we had doctors refusing pregnant patients to come into for their appointments.
And I
Or
will tell
how
you, it's
about the
usually like
nurses?
more after the second trimester when it starts to be a heavier demand on you. There's guidance
Yeah.
right under the respiratory protection standard.
Mm-hmm. And then these women, how about the women that were birthing? They were birthing and they had to have a mask on while they were
That's
giving birth.
infuriating. And that is
And
so dangerous.
yes, I mean, because there's psychological effects to this, right? And wearing a mask like really depersonalizes the interaction between the healthcare worker and their patient. It really does. There's a lot of people that maybe read lips that they couldn't see. I mean, the
That's a
communication
huge thing.
barrier.
It hindered
Yep.
communication with patients. And how many
Mhm.
patients come in, especially depending on where people live? You might have a different population where people speak Spanish, but they know
Mhm.
some English, and or you have people who have communication differences like being deaf, or like people lip read, or they're autistic and they're very visual. It's like I have ADHD. That's why I'm handsy. When I
Mhm.
watch TV, Jody, I have to have the subtitles on, and I'm not deaf.
Me
That's
too.
thank hey girl. That's
Yes.
just because that's how I understand. I'm a very visual person. I'm not an auditory learner.
Yeah.
So we have to understand you always know your audience, and people need to not be looked at as one size fits all for anything.
Mhm. Yeah. How about this? I know that I saw this going around about OSHA, um, um, the temporary standard about like not reporting vaccine
Mm-hmm.
injuries. I think I have a little um, memo here that I want to pop up and share with you, and we can just read it here. And yeah, the subject was enforcement stay of the COVID-19 record keeping and reporting requirements. On June 21st, 2021, OSHA adopted an emergency temporary standard protecting workers from COVID-19 in settings where healthcare or healthcare services are provided. And then they go to list the standard and saying that it was codified 29 CFR, blah, blah, blah. But on December 21st, 2021, OSHA withdrew the non-record keeping and reporting portions of the healthcare emergency temporary standards. At that time, however, OSHA also announced that the record keeping and reporting requirements which were adopted under a separate provision would remain in effect. So this memorandum is essentially to inform you that effective immediately and until further notice, OSHA will not enforce those COVID-19 record keeping and reporting requirements. What do you know? Because they didn't, I guess, in 2021, they said that they told employers not to record vaccine injuries in their mandatory OSHA 300 logs, supposedly to avoid discouraging vaccination. What's your thought about that?
Well, speaking on this issue, I have to just say, like this past week, I saw it was actually trending on X, formerly Twitter, that this came out, a whistleblower explained this. And I thought, that is really strange because this is not new news. I was actually making videos about this in 2021. So why is this news recirculating? It's important for people to comprehend how insane this was, but it was not new news. And I remember when I first stumbled upon this, I don't remember who, I think it was actually in the email, the newsletter through OSHA, which I block them, but they came through and I had to kind of calm people down because it did not affect people the way that they thought it did, but it affected things in a different way. Let me explain what I mean by that is. The OSHA record keeping standard, let's say that you get hurt and you break your hand and you go to the urgent care. They ask you, is this job related? It's because that activates them having to fill out those OSHA 300 logs. And that's because it's considered a workplace injury or illness if it's anything above first aid or involves losing unconsciousness or becoming unconscious. So first off, don't create a greater harm, right? If you have a bunch of people that had adverse reactions from this experimental injection that was mandated, having to report how many people were getting cardiac issues, POTS, you name it, that would have been a red flag of, hey, this is creating greater harm. We have a trend. This is what it is. It used to be called TISR and DART rates. It's changed now, but it would track what did this hazard do, this adverse event, and is it a trend? And is it how much time away from work is it causing in the workplace? So that's where it did. It didn't allow other employees to learn of the hazard. So that's where it violated their own standards. But how it didn't change you was when you have injury and illness reports, let's say 10 workers break their toes, okay? That same hazard is a trend. And what it does is it affects that company's insurance rates. You have people in my profession that actually work for insurance companies. It's called risk management, and they go out and assess the hazards. If you are a business that has a lot of OSHA citations and because of injury and illnesses caused by the workplace, it will affect your insurance rating number. So that this is what it took away. It made it to where it didn't affect their insurance rates. But what it didn't remove was workers' compensation. You could still have them fill out the 300 log, and they would still have to compensate you. If you lost your hand because a saw broke and it was a mechanical failure, you get compensated for that. It did not remove the compensation. And I think that's what a lot of people assumed. But it was egregious, again, because it didn't communicate a hazard. It hid it. And it didn't allow them accountability for covering up a hazard. It should have raised their insurance rates because I can tell you right now, not that employees don't care. The number one thing they care about is that insurance rate. That's the main reason that they comply with OSHA. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, closing out the show, if you could speak directly to the nurse or doctor or any healthcare worker that's out there feeling coerced or discouraged and exhausted, we're so exhausted by these mask or jab policies, Kristen, what would you say to them?
Well, having the courage to know that something is wrong because it goes against the training that you've had isn't defiance. It's upholding the ethics of your profession. And you should never be afraid to do the right thing. It's also how you do it. So if you guys want to write this down, I'm going to give you a chance to pause this video. If you're listening, pausing. You want to look up OSHA's respiratory protection standard. You can put that in a search engine, or it is 29 CFR 1910.134. Look through that and look through the appendixes. And if you want to do the Control F and find key terms, you will see that you have the science and the standards on your side. And if you work in healthcare, we're talking about nurses specifically or med techs, go on YouTube and look up OSHA's hospital respiratory protection toolkit and send that to your HR, send that to your superior, because that's the training that I've been giving. It's the one thing they haven't scrubbed from the internet. You are the one in compliance with OSHA. And remind them that they cannot create a greater hazard in your workplace, and ask them why they are not following that hierarchy of safety and controls. There are so many resources out there. If you just search my name and Tammy Clark, so many videos, letters, our summit that Jody's going to link in the show comments. Again, following the science is not defiance. Please remember, you want to be on the right side of history, and you have so much case precedence behind you and admitted randomized controlled trials that tell you you are right and not wanting to fall into wearing a negligible source control apparatus or a face diaper or a hazard it is not rated for.
Oh, Kristen, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Your tireless work and courage. It just, I know when I reached out to you and I was like, girl, you want to do a show on this? And I'm like, I know we've done so many shows on this.
Can I show you something real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
This book actually right here, people want to look this up. This is by a dentist. And myself, Tammy Clark, Tyson Gabriel, Stephen Petty, we're all IHs. We were part of this court case. This dentist knew. And in this book, it is, I just found a picture of us and Tucker Carlson.
Oh.
But in this book, there, and a letter from him, it gives you all, there's just so much data in this book, you guys. So much data, and it's got visuals, links to everything, all the RCTs. I know it's a huge book, but if you can get a digital copy of the book on mask by Dr. Buckler,
Dr. Philip Buckler.
Philip Buckler.
Okay.
Yep, the book on mask.
Well, you know,
Grapes of Wrath.
That's awesome. I will tell you this too. My dentist during COVID, she's like, we're not doing anything different. We're doing the same thing that we always did. And I was like, really? I mean, if you thought about it, dentists, they were at the highest risk, because not only are they like within inches of the face for prolonged periods of time, and where the patient can't wear a mask, right? They're also spraying the water and everything in there. And my dentist was like, no, not doing anything different. I'm not coercing my employees to do it. We're doing the same thing that we've always done. And yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Kristen, again. Until next time, friends, be safe, be well, and God bless. And make sure you share this show.
Shining light into darkness, thank you for tuning in to Nurses Out Loud.